Have you ever wondered what it looks like when heaven itself wages war? Not with clashing swords, not with massive armies charging across the plains, but with one unseen, unstoppable presence. Picture this. The most powerful empire on earth, the Assyrians, known for their cruelty, their brutality, their arrogance. Their king mocks every nation, every god, and now he mocks the God of Israel. Inside the walls of Jerusalem, panic spreads like wildfire. Families huddle together, mothers hold their children close. Fathers stare at the city gates knowing death is just outside. Soldiers grip their swords, but their hands shake because they know they're no match for the Assyrian war machine. To them, it feels hopeless. And then, it happens. Not with a trumpet blast, not with a drawn-out battle, but with one silent dark night, one angel, one mission. By sunrise, 185,000 Assyrian soldiers are lying lifeless on the ground. Think about that number, 185,000. Entire cities don't even hold that many people. In just hours, the mightiest army in the world is reduced to silence. Now here's the question. What kind of angel can carry out such a mission? What did that night actually look like? Was it sudden? Was it swift? Was it terrifying beyond words? And more importantly, why does God include this story in the Bible for us? Before we dive deep into this breathtaking story, let me take a second to say, welcome to Gospel Insights. If you're passionate about uncovering the hidden treasures of Scripture and seeing how they connect to your life today, then go ahead and hit that like button, subscribe, and don't forget to click the bell icon so you never miss a moment of truth that could change your faith forever. Let's step back in time. The Assyrian Empire, ruthless, unstoppable, feared by every nation under the sun. Their kings were not just rulers, they were tyrants who gloried in terror. They carved into stone the stories of how they skinned their enemies alive, impaled captives on stakes, and left cities burning in ash as a warning to anyone who dared resist them. Now imagine the king of such an empire, Sennacherib. He wasn't just a military genius, he was drunk on his own pride. His armies had already steamrolled through fortified cities and Jerusalem was next on his list. To him, Israel wasn't a threat. It was an insult to his greatness. So he sends his messengers to the walls of Jerusalem, and their words drip with arrogance. They shout in the Hebrew language, loud enough for everyone in the city to hear. Don't let Hezekiah deceive you. Don't let him trick you into thinking your God will save you. Look at the nations we've crushed. Did their God save them? No, neither will yours. You'll starve behind these walls. You'll die if you resist. Surrender now, and maybe you'll live. Can you feel the psychological warfare here? This wasn't just about swords and spears. This was about breaking the spirit of a people before the battle even began. The Assyrians knew that fear is often more powerful than weapons. Now pause for a moment. Put yourself in the shoes of someone inside Jerusalem that day. Maybe you're a mother clutching your child as you hear those words echoing over the walls. Maybe you're an old man remembering past battles, knowing how cruel the Assyrians can be. Or maybe you're a soldier standing guard, hearing the taunts and wondering if your sword is even worth holding. Here's the truth. The Assyrians weren't just mocking Israel, they were mocking God himself. They thought he was just another idol, another powerless name among the ruins of nations. That arrogance, that pride, is what set the stage for one of the most terrifying interventions of God in human history. And here's where I want to stop and ask you, how often does the enemy of your soul do the same thing to you? How often does he whisper in your ear, "Don't trust God"? Look at how many people failed. Look at the evidence. It's hopeless. The strategy hasn't changed. The enemy's voice always tries to magnify the problem and minimize your faith. But here's what's powerful. God was listening. Every mocking word, every arrogant threat, every insult against his name, it didn't go unnoticed. And when God hears his people mocked, when he sees their faith being trampled by fear, he doesn't stay silent forever. The arrogance of Assyria was about to meet the judgment of heaven. Inside the walls of Jerusalem, King Hezekiah walks the palace halls with the weight of an entire nation pressing down on his shoulders. Every cry from a hungry child, every whispered fear in the marketplace, it all lands on him. He knows the Assyrians are camped outside, and their words of mockery are still echoing in his ears. Let's be real. This is the kind of pressure that can break a man. Hezekiah doesn't have the numbers. He doesn't have the weapons. His people are tired, scared, and looking to him for hope. What do you do when the battle is so much bigger than you? Here's what Hezekiah does. He goes to the temple, not to plot, not to strategize, but to pray. And this moment, this desperate prayer, changes everything. He takes the letter of threats that the Assyrian messengers had delivered, a letter dripping with arrogance and blasphemy, and he spreads it out before the Lord. Can you picture that? A king, bowed down on the temple floor, unrolling this letter on the ground as if to say, God, read this for yourself. Look at what they are saying about you. And then he prays, not a prayer of fancy words, not a speech filled with pride. No, this is raw. This is vulnerable. This is the sound of a man who knows only God can save them. He says, O Lord Almighty, the God of Israel, you alone are God over all the kingdoms of the earth. You made heaven and earth. Give ear, Lord, and hear. Open your eyes, Lord, and see. Listen to the words Sennacherib has sent to ridicule the living God. It is true, Lord, that the Assyrian kings have laid waste to these nations and their lands. They have thrown their gods into the fire and destroyed them, for they were not gods but only wood and stone. But now, Lord our God, deliver us from his hand, so that all the kingdoms of the earth may know that you, Lord, are the only God. Stop and think about that. Hezekiah doesn't just ask for deliverance so his people can live. He asks for deliverance so that the world will know who the true God is. That's faith. That's perspective. And maybe that's where we need to pause and reflect. How often do our prayers sound like that? Or do we get so caught up in survival that we forget God's glory is at stake? Hezekiah's prayer reminds us that our battles are never just about us. They are about God's name being honored through our lives. Now here's the incredible part. God hears him. The prophet Isaiah sends word back with a message from the Lord. And it's not a gentle, soft-spoken answer. It's a thundering declaration. God basically says, don't be afraid. I've heard the insults. I've seen the pride. I will deal with this king myself. He will not set foot in this city. I will defend this place and save it. Can you imagine the relief washing over Hezekiah as those words are read aloud? The people trembling behind the walls suddenly find a flicker of hope. Because when God speaks, everything changes. This chapter shows us something powerful. When you're outnumbered, when you're mocked, when you feel cornered, the greatest weapon you have is not your sword, it's your prayer. And God is not deaf to the cries of his people. The night falls over Jerusalem. The city gates are shut tight, the streets are quiet, and behind the walls families whisper prayers into the dark. Mothers hush their children to sleep, though their own hearts pound with fear. Soldiers stand on the ramparts, staring out at the glow of campfires scattered across the hills, the campfires of 185,000 Assyrian soldiers. The air is heavy, thick with dread. Everyone knows tomorrow could be their last day. But heaven has a different plan. While the people of Jerusalem try to rest, while fear coils like a snake in their hearts, something stirs in the unseen realm. God gives a command, and one angel, just one, is sent forth. The scriptures don't tell us his name. They don't tell us his face, they simply call him the angel of the Lord. But what we do know is this: he carried the authority of heaven, and in his presence, no human army could stand. Now picture this moment. In the Assyrian camp, soldiers are laughing around fires, sharpening blades, boasting about the destruction they will bring in the morning. Some are already asleep, confident that Jerusalem will be theirs. But as midnight passes, something begins to move. Silent, invisible, swift. The angel passes through the camp, not with noise, not with spectacle, but with the chilling stillness of divine judgment. One by one, Tents fall silent. The laughter dies. Breathing stops. Hearts cease. No alarm is sounded. No sword is raised. By morning, 185,000 Assyrian soldiers are lifeless on the ground. Think about that number again. 185,000. The entire strength of an empire erased in a single night. No arrows fired, no walls breached, just the unseen hand of God's dark angel carrying out his judgment. Now, let's pause and ask the question burning in your mind. What must that angel have looked like? Was he cloaked in shadow, moving like a storm through the camp? Did he wield a sword of flame that only heaven could see? Or was it simpler? Just a breath of judgment that no man could resist? The Bible leaves the details hidden, and maybe that's intentional. Because the point isn't how he did it. The point is that God did it. When the people of Jerusalem awoke the next morning, they looked out over the walls, expecting to see an army ready for battle. Instead, they saw silence. No shouting, no movement. Just bodies strewn across the fields. The very army that threatened to wipe them out was gone. Imagine the shock, the awe, the fear, and the relief that swept over that city. And King Sennacherib, the one who mocked God, he returned home humiliated, only to later be struck down by his own sons. The proud king who thought he could defy heaven ended in disgrace. Now here's where the story turns personal. Maybe you felt surrounded by an army of problems. Debt, sickness, betrayal, fear. Maybe the voices of the enemy have mocked your faith, telling you God won't show up. But this story reminds us that one night, just one night, can change everything. With one command, God can turn the battlefield around. With one move, he can silence what looked impossible. And here's the deeper truth. Sometimes the greatest miracles happen when you're asleep, when you don't even see it coming. God fights for his people even in the darkest of nights. The morning after that dreadful, holy night, Jerusalem awoke to silence. Imagine the scene. Men climbing the city walls to check the horizon, expecting to see the Assyrian banners waving, soldiers preparing to storm the gates. Instead, there is nothing but the eerie stillness of death. As the sun rises, it reveals what no one could have imagined. 185,000 bodies stretched across the hills, rows of tents now empty, weapons abandoned, campfires burned out. An army that once thundered with pride now lies lifeless in the dust. The people of Jerusalem stand in awe. Mothers clutch their children. Fathers who once braced for the worst now weep with relief. Soldiers lower their swords, trembling, not because of fear of the enemy, but because they've just witnessed the terrifying mercy of God. And Hezekiah, the king who laid his nation's fears before the Lord, walks into that morning knowing that prayer changed history. His prayer, his faith, his refusal to bow to fear, brought about a deliverance that no military strategy ever could. But here's the part I don't want you to miss. This wasn't just a victory for Israel. It was a statement to the world. God was saying, I am not like the idols of wood and stone. I am the living God. I defend my name. I defend my people. The nations who heard of this would know that Israel's God wasn't to be mocked. Now let's turn the spotlight toward us. What's the lesson here? It's not just about an angel striking down soldiers. It's about the God who fights for his people. The Assyrians represent the problems, the fears, the overwhelming odds that stack up against you. And just like Hezekiah, you're going to face moments when you don't have the strength to fight back. But what do you do in those moments? You lay it before the Lord. You take your letter, your doctor's report, your overdue bills, your broken relationships, your unanswered questions, and you spread it out before him in prayer. Because when you reach the end of yourself, that's where the power of God begins. And let's be honest, you and I need this reminder. Life will mock your faith. The enemy will whisper that God won't come through. Circumstances will try to convince you that hope is gone. But this story reminds us, God hears, God sees, and God responds in ways that shake the earth. There's another lesson too. God doesn't always show his power through us. Sometimes he shows his power for us. The people of Jerusalem didn't lift a finger that night. They didn't fire an arrow. They didn't swing a sword. All they did was trust and wait. And that's one of the hardest things to do, isn't it? To wait. To trust when everything screams at you to panic. But sometimes the waiting is the battlefield where faith wins or loses. And think about this. If God could silence the greatest army on earth in one night, what could he do with the battles you face? If he could turn back the tide of history with one angel, what might he accomplish in your life when you surrender everything to him? The aftermath of this story isn't just relief, it's worship. The people of Jerusalem saw firsthand what it means for God to be their defender. And that truth is timeless. This story isn't just about Jerusalem. It isn't just about a forgotten empire and an angel of judgment. It's about you. Because the truth is, you've stood behind your own walls of fear before, haven't you? You felt outnumbered, overwhelmed, cornered. Maybe not by soldiers with spears, but by problems that felt just as deadly. For some of you, it's financial battles. Bills piling up, creditors knocking, and the numbers simply don't add up. For others, it's sickness, a diagnosis that feels bigger than your strength, like an army pressing in on every side. And for many, it's emotional and spiritual battles. Anxiety, depression, guilt that whispers, "You'll never be free." And then, like the Assyrians, those problems mock you. They laugh at your faith. They whisper lies. Where is your God now? Others have fallen, and you will too. Don't bother praying. Don't bother hoping. Sound familiar? That's because the enemy hasn't changed his tactics. He knows fear is a weapon. He knows doubt can weaken your faith before the battle even begins. But here's the beauty of this story. Just as Hezekiah spread that letter before God, you can lay your battles before him too. You can take every mocking word, every fear, every impossible circumstance and say, "Lord, look at this. This is bigger than me, but it's not bigger than you." And then, you trust. You wait. You hold on to the truth that God has not abandoned you, because the same God who sent his angel to strike down 185,000 soldiers is the same God who promises to fight for his children today. Let me make this personal. Some of the greatest victories in your life will not come from what you can do. They will come from what God does when you've run out of strength. Some of the most powerful miracles won't happen because you fought harder, but because you surrendered deeper. And don't miss this. Sometimes God's greatest work happens when you least expect it. While Jerusalem slept, God was moving. While they rested in their fear, God was fighting for them. And maybe that's your word today. You may not see him working, but in the silence, in the stillness, in the long, dark night, God is already fighting battles you don't even know about. So here's my question to you. What army is camped outside your walls right now? What's the battle that keeps you awake at night? And can you believe, really believe, that one night, one move, one word from God can change everything? Because this story doesn't just tell us about an angel, it tells us about a God who never abandons his people. A God who steps in when human strength runs out. A God who makes a way where there is no way. The God who fought for Jerusalem is the God who fights for you. The story of Jerusalem's deliverance didn't end with relief. It left a shadow, a memory, a testimony. For generations, the people of Judah would remember the night when one angel, sent by God, wiped out an entire army. They would tell their children, their grandchildren, "We saw what the Lord can do." And here's the truth. When you encounter God's power, when you truly see his hand at work in your life, you're never the same again. It shapes the way you live, the way you pray, the way you face the next battle. But let's be honest, we forget, don't we? God delivers us once, and a few years later, when a new army shows up at our walls, we panic all over again. That's why stories like this matter. They remind us to live in the shadow of what God has already done. If he was faithful then, he will be faithful now. So how do we live in that shadow? 3 things stand out. First, live with confidence. not fear. Fear will always whisper. The Assyrian voice never really goes away. It just changes form. But you don't have to bow to it. The same power that silenced an empire lives with you today. You can walk into the unknown with the confidence that God fights for you. Second, live with prayer as your first weapon, not your last resort. Hezekiah didn't waste time negotiating with fear. He went straight to the temple. And that's a lesson for us. Don't wait until you've tried everything else before you pray. Start with prayer. Spread your letters before God and let Him carry the weight. Third, live for God's glory, not just your survival. Notice how Hezekiah prayed. He didn't just say, "Lord, save us so we won't die." He said, "Save us so that the world may know you are the only true God." When your life becomes about God's glory, your battles become testimonies. Your victories become proof to others that God is real. Think about it. What if the battle you're facing right now isn't just about you? What if God intends to use your story to strengthen someone else's faith? What if your midnight struggle is setting the stage for someone else's dawn of hope? That's what it means to live in the shadow of God's power. You carry with you the memory of His past victories, the assurance of His present strength, and the hope of His future promises. And maybe, just maybe, the next time the enemy surrounds you, instead of trembling in fear, you'll look out at those armies and whisper to yourself, "This battle belongs to the Lord, and I've seen what He can do in just one night." The story of the angel who struck down 185,000 soldiers isn't just ancient history, it's a living reminder of who God is. Because here's the truth. The God of yesterday is the same God of today, and He will be the same God forever. Think about it. Centuries ago, He heard the prayer of a desperate king in a trembling city. He saw the arrogance of a mocking empire, and with one command, He turned what seemed impossible into undeniable victory. That same God still hears, still sees, still responds. The world wants us to believe God has grown silent, that His power is a story for the past. But if you've walked with Him, if you've trusted Him even once, you know that isn't true. The God who parted the Red Sea, who brought down Jericho's walls, who shut the mouths of lions, who sent His angel to destroy the Assyrians, that God is still fighting for His people today. And if He could handle armies and empires, don't you think He can handle your situation too? If one angel could wipe out 185,000 men in a single night, what might God be doing behind the scenes in your life right now? You may not see it yet, but He is working. Let this story remind you. The enemy may surround you, but he cannot defeat you. Fear may shout at you, but it cannot silence God's promise. Darkness may cover the night, but morning always comes, and with it, the victory of God. So here's my challenge for you today. Live as if you believe it. Pray as if heaven is listening. Stand as if the walls around you are stronger than the armies against you, and trust as if God's angel is already on the way. The story ends with this truth echoing through time. The battle belongs to the Lord. It always has, and it always will. And when you walk with Him, no weapon formed against you can stand. Not then, not now, not ever. The story of the angel who struck down 185,000 Assyrian soldiers in a single night is more than a record of history. It's a revelation of who God is. It shows us His justice, His power, His faithfulness, and His unmatched ability to defend His people when they have no strength left. Think about it. Jerusalem had no chance. They were outnumbered, surrounded, mocked, and exhausted. From a human perspective, the city was finished. But when the people humbled themselves in prayer, when King Hezekiah spread that letter before the Lord, everything shifted. Their weakness became the stage for God's strength. Their desperation became the doorway for a miracle. And here's the heart of the lesson. God doesn't need an army to save you. He doesn't need resources, strategies, or human strength. He needs only a moment, one night, one command, one angel. That's all it takes for Him to turn the tide completely. But this story also carries a warning. The Assyrians weren't just fighting Israel. They were fighting against God Himself. Their arrogance blinded them. They thought their power was greater than his promise, their weapons stronger than his word. In the end, their pride became their downfall. And isn't that the way it always is? Pride lifts itself up against God, but it never lasts. Now here's where it touches us. Your battle may not look like theirs, but your God is the same. The same power that silenced an empire still works today. The same faith that saved Jerusalem is the faith you can hold on to right now. Your struggles, your fears, your impossible odds, they are not the end of your story. They are the setup for God's victory. When you look back on this story, remember, God doesn't just protect cities. He protects hearts. He doesn't just defend nations. He defends individuals who call on his name. And he doesn't just move in history. He moves in your life, right here, right now. The night the angel moved through the Assyrian camp became a night of terror for some, but a night of deliverance for others. And that's the dividing line. Those who trust in themselves fall, but those who trust in God rise. If this story spoke to your heart, don't let it end here. Share it with someone who needs hope today. And before you go, remember to hit that like button, subscribe to Gospel Insights, and click the bell icon so you never miss the moments where God's word comes alive and reminds you, you are never alone in the fight.